Guys, hello and welcome to another edition of Pay It Forward. My name is Ben Rookwood. I am one of the coaches at Cortex. Pay It Forward is a platform to raise awareness and create a better understanding, to engage with people who may feel isolated, challenge current stereotypes and outlooks. Today, our guest is Kev Wall from A New Hope Fitness, who today is going to talk about his journey and his battle against addiction. Kev, how are we doing?
Yeah, mate, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. It's great to finally get you on. Obviously, we've had obviously a bit of a challenge with that through technology and timing and schedules. But yeah, I was really keen to get you on board. You've got a fantastic story and very inspiring, and I think it's important for people to hear that. As we said in the intro, then you're going to be talking about your battle with addiction, and we're going to talk about drug addiction here today.
Yeah.
So for the guys that kind of don't know your story, if you want to talk about the level of addiction, and then we'll kind of obviously pick around obviously the causes and the signs and the progress after.
Okay, cool. Yes, I mean, the last time I'd done one of these sort of things, I would suppose I'd start with, hi, I'm Kevin, I'm an addict, because that's kind of how we do it. So I consider myself still to this day, even though I haven't used for over 3 years, I still consider myself an alcoholic and an addict. My drug of choice was cocaine. And to give you an idea, towards the end of my using, which probably could date back anywhere up to the last couple of years, I was a daily user. I would use from when I got up in the morning, whether that was 6 o'clock in the morning, whether that was 4 o'clock in the morning. I would use periodically all the way through the day until I got home from work, and then it would be a case of probably adding drinking to the equation, and I would use both coke and booze to sort of like to fix whatever was wrong with whatever was going on in my head. It was a progression, so it wasn't always like that, but in the end, you know, I was someone who drank in the morning prior to going to work. You know, I did everything I thought I would never do from like as long as I can imagine. I was spending upward of £600 a day. In the last 6 months of my using, we think that I spent around about £90,000. Yeah, and it cost me everything. You know, it cost me everything. I was married at the time, but you know, I'm going to be divorced soon. I lost my house, my job. You know, you talk about in recovery, and you know the 12-step program that I used to find sobriety, about hitting your rock bottom. The night before I came into recovery, and the kind of end of my using journey, I decided I was going to kill myself. I'd planned the method of how I was going to do it. I'd got the tranquilizers and the booze and the coke that I was going to go out on, and I just couldn't finish it. Couldn't take that last step. Thank God. But yeah, so it took everything. You know, it robbed absolutely everything from me. It was horrible. It was Groundhog Day for donkey's years.
I think with the severity of your addiction and obviously your usage, I think that's why it makes your story even more incredible, that you know to where you are now and knowing where you're at now. So obviously that was the height when you were saying, you know, and how much money you were spending and how much obviously during the day you was using. What was was there a reasoning for you to kind of get to this stage, or was it just a series of events of just experimenting and just leading out of control?
So I think, you know, knowing what I know now in hindsight, I think I was destined for some kind of mental issue from a very young age. You know, I can't, you know, my family background was fantastic. I've got loving parents. There was never any trauma in my life as a youngster. I never experienced death or hardship, and there's no excuse, if you like, or there's no reason for me to use or do things the way I did. But my first addiction wasn't drugs, it was computer games, you know, right back until the age of 7 or 8. I don't know if you remember Premiership or Championship Manager, like the football computer game. You know, I would use it to escape reality, and I would use it to escape my head, and I didn't know that at the time. It was just kind of a thing. But that was kind of my first addiction. I would play if I wasn't at school. If it was a school holiday, I would play from the second I got up to the second I went to bed. Wow. You know, eating sporadically, and I was just talking to Helen, my lovely girlfriend, about it. because it just something jogged my memory. I would leave the computer on overnight because I didn't want to wait for the time it took to load the game up in the morning.
Wow.
Because that's how my story's about fear. I was scared of something or everything for as long as I can remember. And it was just coping strategies. So when I found pot at the age of about 13, that kind of gave me something, that kind of gave me like a dulling, whatever that pain or that fear was. But it never was quite enough. And it was, it was only when I had my first line at the age of sort of 17 or 18, I was like, this is it. You know, this is what I need. And even though I didn't start daily using from the age of 18, you know, I had a decade of uncontrolled addiction. There's no two ways about it. And it just was it's a progressive illness.
Yeah. So when was you aware of that? So was you aware when you started getting into drugs that you had this addictive personality, or was it later on you realised, and looking back in reflection, then you identified that?
All reflection. When I went to my first meeting, that, you know, the day after, it was the morning after I was going to take my own life, and I'd smashed everything and I'd lost everything that I'd ever sort of worked towards. You know, you go around the room in these 12-step meetings and everyone says, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm an addict. And I still couldn't bring myself to sort of concede to myself that I was.
Right.
You know, I think I announced myself, I said, hi, I'm Kevin, I think I'm an addict. You know, just done all that money, I've lost my house, I've lost my wife, I've, you know, not just contemplated, but taking the first action to actively committing suicide. And I still couldn't say, you know what, I really am a drug addict. It was, you know, it was all retrospect.
Yeah. So found drugs, obviously in your teens. How long was the journey and the progression of the severity of your addiction to alcohol and drugs?
I think I used like I play computers. You know, I used from the second that I started. I was always a functional addict. So by that I mean that I would hold down good jobs, and I had a really good career. Up until that point where kind of it all fell to pieces. I smoked pot heavily from the second I found pot, you know, and when I assumed that everyone smoked pot like I did. I assumed that everyone finished school, went home, smoked weed, you know, and hid away in their bedroom because they didn't want to go outside, because they didn't want to be around people. I figured that's what other people did. And then when coke came on the scene, I was never particularly fussed with booze. It was a contributing sort of effect. So when we were going out when we were 18, 19, sort of to the pubs, I would much rather pick up some gear than go out for the booze, because I'd much rather just go and take it. I think I was always going to increase my usage, but I think as I earned more money and, you know, my career sort of got better, I had more resource. But I also had more need to use, if that makes sense, because I know now that I used on sort of like on feelings and emotions. So if I had something big at work coming up, I might feel like I needed to do it the night before, because I might need something to settle me down the night before. And then the day after I'd done whatever that might be, and it might have been a big meeting or a presentation, then I'd want something to celebrate the fact that I'd done the big meeting and presentation. So once a week on a Friday, then quite quickly turned to 2 or 3 times a week. And by the time I was 26, 27, probably on the verge of using 3 or 4 times a week. After my nan died, she was a massive part of my life, and she was the first person I've experienced, you know, who sort of passed away. I think that's kind of when the using turned much darker, and it wasn't about going out anymore. It was just about using pretty much daily. So yeah, so I reckon a decade of progressive using daily, and the only thing that changed was just the quantity. So I might do 1 or 2 a day for 10 years, or for 5 or 6 years, sorry. And then by the time I'm mid-30s, it might be 4 or 5 a day. And the more you use, the more you need. You know, I could sniff a gram straight away without even thinking about it. I could probably do 2 or 3 more within a few hours. Yeah. And it wouldn't really matter. I've taken so much sometimes that I've been sitting hiding in my house at home where I thought my heart would explode. Wow. And I'd still take more. Sometimes I've been so bunged up and blocked up that I couldn't sniff anymore, so I'd been jumping in the shower every half an hour to flush my nose out to try and take more, even though I felt like I was going to die there and then. You know, it was almost like a relief if I could have done, type thing. Yeah. So there wasn't. I knew I had problems for years, but I never. There was always an excuse or a reason that I could sort of justify it. Well, I can afford it. It's not affecting work, all that sort of stuff.
So with that, were people aware of your addiction? Was there sort of anyone enabling it, or was you managing to, obviously you stated that you was functional and obviously still maintaining obviously a high paid job and stuff like that, but did people know that and just kind of sort of turned a blind eye or just accepted that was you?
No, I think I was very close, very careful about how I chose who I hung around with. I mean, you know, my wife at the time, she caught me about 2 or 3 years before the end of my using, and she told me point blank that if you ever use again, I'm leaving you instantly because your drug use is becoming a problem. She knew I used before, you know, recreationally. Yes, she thought it recreationally. So I hid like the peak of my using from her completely. I suppose the only other people that knew how much I used were drug dealers, the people that I surrounded myself with, and you know, just like now, I surround myself with really positive, good, cool people now. Back then, I surrounded myself with people who liked to be in a pub, who liked to drink, who liked to use, because that was the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
So no, I was completely, and that's one of the worst things. I felt like I was alone constantly.
Yeah.
I could never ask anyone for help because no one knew. And how do I just come out and say, oh, by the way, for 10 years I've been smashing myself to bits and I don't know how to stop and I can't stop.
Yeah. So in this journey, so you get to that point, and like you said, you're holding on to it by yourself, and obviously very minimal people obviously know. What was the kind of tipping point where you thought, okay, I don't think I can win this battle anymore, and I want to sort of end my life?
The tipping point purely was there was no bravery on my part. I got caught. You know, it was, I can't say that I had this like profound moment where I thought, you know what, I'm cleaning up my life. The story was on the Wednesday. My wife caught me, schoolboy error. I hadn't cleared the text messages on my phone. She borrowed my phone, and I just picked up, and she caught me. And then she'd looked through my phone, and there must have been maybe a few more messages that she'd seen. It was almost a relief, you know, when she said, you know, how much, what have you been doing? I just said to her, I've been using for years, and I can't stop. And she promised, like she promised, she left me instantly that night. She told me that she didn't want anything to do with it anymore. You know, we've been together 14 years, I think. And but this is how powerless I was, because we were sitting in our car. She jumped in her car and tore off to her mum's to find some sort of solace, I suppose. And I had 2 grams of gear on me, and I didn't. My first thought wasn't to chase her down and to like ask for forgiveness. I did those 2 grams because she might find them. You know, and then 2 days later, I lost my job. Thank God, because if I hadn't, I still would have had the money coming in. I still would have been able to, you know, carry on doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I'd just started with a new company. I'd been there about 3 or 4 months, and to be honest, my life was unraveling. You know, as much as I said I was functional, there's only so much of what I was doing that you can do. You can't perform at a high level on 3 hours sleep or 2 hours sleep a night. It just doesn't work. Yeah, and it was almost a relief. So, you know, when I failed in the attempt to sort of like kill myself, if you like, someone took me to, it was my wife's brother, so my brother-in-law, fair play to him. He took me to a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous, chucked me through the door, and that's kind of where my new life started. You know, that moment there, I kind of found out there was hope. I moved back in with mum and dad and told them, bless them, they just landed from holiday, and they found their sort of like 37-year-old son homeless, penniless, on their door saying that this is what I've done to my life. And they were cool.
Were they surprised or unaware, or did they?
Mum always said that she knew that there was something wrong because of my behaviours, and my behaviours were skewed and wonky for some time.
Yeah.
But she never kind of knew what it was. You know, I was very good at not seeing them. You know, I would say I'm going around there and then didn't. You know, and I could function, I could perceive normal to most people, even if I'd been using, or I'd have a few hours off beforehand, and that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you become a master at wearing a mask. You know, everything you do is kind of like a fake version of yourself.
Yeah, which is quite scary, and I think sometimes some people need to realise that yeah, sometimes when people act weird, there could be a coupling effect for that, and obviously, yeah, it could be so much going on that you just haven't got a clue to what that person's going through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's a lot of people hurting out there. I see it more now because I'm a little bit more aware. But you know, I used to drive to work in the morning. You know, I'd probably done a couple of grams of gear already. You know, at 7 o'clock in the morning, driving into London, and I'd see people on the side of the road waiting for lifts, and they might be drinking their can of Skull, going to work as like on sites. And I used to think to myself, how disgusting is that? They're drinking already this morning. You know, completely ignoring the fact that I've done a couple of grams of gear already.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many people out there that probably have a problem like I did.
Yeah. So when you talked about your kind of your struggle to actually admit that and obviously be aware of obviously your addiction at the time, when did you kind of hold your hands up and yes, accept that you are an addict and you have this obviously personality?
I think probably a couple of weeks into my recovery journey. So the 12-step program, if you don't know much about it, you kind of get yourself a sponsor and they take you to a 12-step program, a 12-step sort of like direction. I think probably a couple of weeks in, I kind of truly conceded to myself, you know what, I am an addict, because I started surrounding myself with people just like me, but people who were recovering. And I could see the similarities. You know, I went from thinking I was completely alone in this world, not knowing why I couldn't stop drinking and using, because I'm not stupid, and I wasn't stupid at the time. You know, I knew what was going on was bad, but I just couldn't fix it. And it was almost a relief once I could sit in a room of like 30 odd people who've all got problems just like mine and say, do you know what, I'm one of you. You know, I'm just the same as you. You know, I am an addict. So. You know, I still believe that to the day. I have disagreements with Hulls about it. She says you're not an addict anymore because you don't use, and I'm like, no, I am, because my head hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It's just the way I manage things today is different.
Yeah. So with that, how do you manage that now? So if you obviously you had that obviously addictive personality, how do you kind of sort of manage that or feed it or suppress it? You know, how do you deal with that now?
So I was lucky enough that I found this 12-step fellowship called Cocaine Anonymous. It's, you know, if you are listening and you've got a problem, it's not a drug specific fellowship. You can have any form of substance problem or gambling problem, you know, and they will help you out if you go to that sort of place. You know, any of the 12-step fellowships are very, very similar, and they're all very, very good. I've been to more than one. I've been to Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. And I followed that 12-step program. So basically, in a shortened version, I found someone who was just like me, an addict just like me. They've got no qualifications, but they've been through the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which was written in 1934, I think, off the top of my head. And they take you through the 12-step process, and it's like trust God, clean house, help others is the only way I can describe it, or the best way to describe it. And God isn't about, you know, like getting on your knees and praying to a big man in the sky with a beard and all that sort of stuff. It's just something. You know, it could be the universe, it can be the rooms, the fellowship of 12-step. And gradually what you do is you come to realise that you've got the issues that you've got. You then clean house, so you take stock of your life and all the stuff that you've done, and you become willing to make amends to people. You know, and there are people that I haven't been able to make amends to, but I am willing to do so if they ever cross my path, or, you know, if they ever want my amends. And then kind of the last stage is like maintenance. So I'm not active with the 12-step group at the moment. I haven't been for some time because I'm heavily involved in the CrossFit scene, and that's, even if they don't realise it, is very similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, you've got a lot of like-minded people with a similar sort of goal, working towards something. So I kind of use that as part of my recovery at the moment. You know, that sort of group of people who are good to be around. But I still follow like a 12-step lifestyle. So I pray and meditate every morning. I try and live sort of like along the sort of stoic type thing. I try not to get too excited, or I try not to let my emotions get carried away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not to say that I don't experience like joy and happiness and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just, you know I use off emotion, and my behaviours, I really, really monitor my behaviours. If I do something that I believe is wrong, I'm very, very quick to rectify it. You know, especially, you know, simple things that would plague me, not apologising if I've done something wrong. I don't try not to break the law, even to the point of speeding. You know, I try and protect myself in any way, shape, or form that I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've seen before the stuff you've posted and stuff, and obviously the stoicism. It's a good feed, and it's a good way. I think it's. I've said it before. You know, it's a good. If you're not religious, it's a good kind of filler for that to kind of sort of moral compass and guidance to go off. And obviously, centuries obviously old, and it's still applicable to today, and a lot of guidance and CBTs written from it. So moving forward, so how with the journey, how was that journey? Was it pretty smooth? Was there any kind of relapses? Was there any kind of cravings or close calls?
Early recovery is disgusting. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I think if you speak to anyone who has walked my path, if you like, once you put down drink and drugs, you know why you used in the first place. You know, because all of a sudden you've got all this shit going on and you can't pick up like you did before. Well, you can, and that's that. You know, there's a massive relapse rate. I'm so lucky I haven't relapsed so far. You know, take one day at a time. The first 13 days were disgusting. I smoked back then. I was smoking 70 fags a day because I just didn't know what to do anything else. I just literally, my poor old man, he would sit and kind of like guard me because he's retired. So I was kind of under like house arrest at the age of 37 from my parents. Yeah. But I literally would just sit in the front room and smoke fags. It was horrible. And then after about 12 or 13 days, the craving for me disappeared. But I was doing absolutely everything I was told. You know, I promised that I wanted to get clean, and I did what I was told. And then it kind of gradually becomes not the thing you're thinking about every 30 seconds to every couple of minutes to, you know, I still think about it, you know, today. You know, the sun comes out and I think to myself, oh, I could have a cider, and then within seconds I'm thinking, well, if I have a cider, I could have a couple of grams, because that's just the way my head works. But that's kind of, at first it was proper rough, and had I not had the support of my parents and the 12-step groups, I have no doubt that I would have relapsed repeatedly.
It kind of sounds like you've managed to use your weakness as a strength, in the sense that with that addictiveness, you're addicted to the 12-step program, and you've now channeled that, and that's what you want to try and obviously make sure you adhere to, which is awesome. Yeah, and it must be tough, especially, how does that feel like in terms of obviously, you know, going out socially and stuff like that, and obviously being around people that drink, you know, can you go into a pub, or, you know, how do you feel when you go to, say, maybe a restaurant or anything like that?
I think as long as, for me, you know, I know some people avoid them completely. As long as I kind of check in my behaviours and my reason for going there is sound. If I'm going out for a meal, or if we're going to a friend's party or anything like that, you know, I'm usually pretty cool with it. It doesn't really bother me now. At first it did. You know, I used to find myself like clocking whereabouts the bouncers were, because that's what I did. You know, I used to look at where the bouncers were so I could sneak off and sniff and, you know, do that sort of stuff. And we, you know, you'd be so amazed at the number of habits that you develop that link into your using. So now I think as long as it's not too raucous, because I quite used to like getting involved and getting in on it. You know, we did go to one place where there was like a lot of rugby lads about, and it was, you know, it's just probably a bit of carnage, and I suppose I quite like that back in the day. But I recognise that that's a problem now, so we just left. You know, and I wouldn't just go to a pub for the sake of just going to a pub. I just manage my life around it. I'm not prepared to take the chance of putting myself in harm's way. That, you know, that's one of the ways of keeping clean, is just, you know, staying out of the way. And I promised, you said about like doing the 12-step program the same way I did drinking and using. I did. I absolutely threw myself into it, and my sponsor told me that, you know, if you want to stay clean, there's only one thing you've got to change, and that's everything. And that, still remember that. It just works. It's like, you know, I have to change everything about who I am, everything about how I do things, you know, and I still do.
Yeah, and I love that. That's a good line. I like that. So yeah, and obviously where you're at now, obviously it's an absolute, flip reverse where you're at now. So now, obviously personal training and obviously coaching athletes and competing yourself as an athlete. Obviously you compete as well and compete alongside you, which has been awesome. So again, how far was that from day one at rehab to where you're at now?
I've got some really good friends from sort of like pre-using that I've kept in loose contact with, and one of them, who was my best friend, he was my best man when I got married. He lived around the corner from my parents, so when he found out what happened, he came to my house really early on, like within the first week, and he said, "Look, if you want to do something, you can come around mine and start lifting weights." That's kind of how my fitness journey, started. And I'm truly grateful to him, because he put me on the path that's changed the whole of my life. So that's how I started. I went around his once a week. Like, I had to tell it literally is 2 minutes away. I had to tell Dad where I was going. I'm 37 years old. I'll be back in half an hour. I've got my phone on me. And that's how it started. Then I started doing some HIIT stuff with him and a group of girls in like Norton Common in Letchworth, which was awesome, and in Arlesey. And then one of the guys I was in recovery with, the guy that I credit to saving my life, because he was the first person I heard share his story, and he's been a massive part in my recovery. And he was looking for a gym, and he said, "Look, we found this place. It's a CrossFit gym in Letchworth. Why don't you come along?" So I went, but I was too scared to get involved with the CrossFit for a little while, because I was probably only 6 months clean, and I didn't really know who I was. I spent so long like hiding from myself. I was really, really unsure of myself, to the point I was terrified. So I did my own stuff. I just basically deadlifted for 6 months. Because that's the only thing I knew how to do. And then they had like an on-ramp in the January. So this would be 2018, because I've been doing that for 2 years. So they had an on-ramp in the January, and I finally plucked up the courage to jump in. And that was it. I was sold. Once the high intensity stuff started coming out, I was that was my jam. I just really liked it. And as this was coming along, I met a guy in recovery, and we started roofing. Bearing in mind I'd been sitting behind a desk for 20 years, managing businesses. This guy gave me an opportunity to do some roofing, so I learned some other stuff. I put myself through a PT course, a level 3 PT course, and I paid for the CrossFit level 1. And then stuff just started falling into place, because I was doing the next right thing all the time. It just seemed to start working really nicely. But it's been awesome. It's been quality.
That's incredible. And again, you need to take credit for yourself. It's nice of you to give credit to other people, but again, you made the decisions. You put in the hard work. You put yourself on them courses and took them opportunities. You recognize that you needed to change your environment to grow and obviously keep striving, which you've done. So now you talked about obviously your PTing, and obviously now you're PTing people and coaching CrossFit group classes now. So how does that feel? Have you met anyone yet along your sort of coaching journey yet that's been in the same situation, or?
Oh mate, we're everywhere. There's so many of us. The guy that got me into CrossFit and his beautiful wife, they're just like me. There are a number of people. If you look at the Masters division in CrossFit, look at the winners for the last 10 years of various different age groups, there are countless people in recovery. I think it's, and same with the running community. I don't know a huge amount about the running community, but my girlfriend Helen, before she was pregnant, did a lot of running, and that's there's lots of us that find our way there. Do you know what? There are so many people out there with various different problems, and you don't have to have drunk or used the amount I used, just in the way that I drunk and used. It was always to hide feelings. There's so many people out there. So I come across people all the time. And the nice thing is, because I do this sort of stuff, and I have been active and posting on Facebook and all that sort of stuff, people reach out. I've had people from school contact me. I've had people that you would never expect to be just like me, because I suppose when I told one of my really good friends about what was going on, he was just, I used to see him all the time. He just couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe, because we are good at hiding stuff. Because we've had to.
I think the way that obviously people's perceptions, you know, if they heard your story about your drug addiction, you know, if you say, right, well, what do you think Kev's life was like? And they'll probably paint your childhood and your family home to be, you know, a very sort of traumatic one with lots of heartache and misery, and it's not the case. And again, you know, obviously you had that addictive personality, and that was, you know, fed through different channels, and you know, you got exposed to one that was obviously very, very costly and very, you know, nearly took your life for it.
I think. Sorry. I honestly believe if I hadn't found coke, I'd have found something else.
Yeah.
Because my problem was never, you know, the drugs were never really the problem. They were always a solution to whatever the problem was.
Yeah.
You know, and from as long as I can remember, from the earliest age, I was just scared of everything. You know, it was just a way to deal with fear.
Yeah.
I'd be scared of going to school. I'd be scared of coming home from school. I'd be scared of being on my own because my head would constantly tell me that I was less than. I was just scared. You know, back then I didn't know how to do anything else. So when I found something that took me out of myself, that was the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, kind of like we talked about before, is people act in a certain way. It could be 101 reasons why, you know, that person maybe doesn't acknowledge you or looks down when they talk to you. It's not because they're being rude; it's because they could be going through something that you just never imagined that that they're going through. And I think sometimes you need to just again give people the opportunity to express why they are like that, or you know, try and talk to them to recognise if there is anything there.
Well, you probably see it, you know, with your coaching experience. People come to sort of to do the stuff that we do because they want to make a change.
Yeah, 100%.
How many people have got like a hidden backstory behind, you know, behind why they do what they do, and you know, why they come and push themselves at high intensity, like exercise classes, and that probably comes out over a period of time.
Yeah, definitely. And I just believe that, you know, for every, you know, if I've got a class with 12 athletes on, then 12 athletes, they've all got 12 different stories, you know what I mean? And they've all been through highs and lows. They've got things that they feel passionate about. And again, I think with what's going on in the world today, I think everyone's, you know, got an opinion about everything and sees things in a different way. And you have to respect that, but you have to respect that obviously other people see it differently. But the common denominator is communication and listening to people and giving people the opportunity to talk, and then just taking in what they've got to say and obviously talk it through.
Yeah, I think it's. I think a lot of people are scared as well, just scared of telling their story. It's quite hard just to say that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, there's you know, I know it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, just because, you know, I think a lot of people assume that because you had a little bit of clean time, you know, and 3 years clean is nothing in comparison to the amount of time that I used. You know, stuff doesn't necessarily go all right all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky now because I've kind of learned, you know, a little bit about myself. If I'm not all right, I can just say, do you know what, I don't feel right, and I can reach out to 100 different people.
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky for that. But how many people sort of like hide away because that's kind of what we've been taught. And, you know, that's what we do. That's what we've done from a very young age. And you know, I'd love it if people were able to speak up if they're struggling. Because it is really freeing. You know, it takes the load off so much.
Yeah, like you said, when you found out, when you said you initially got caught, you know, the relief of that, you know, that getting caught. We talked about it before, you know, again, people that were, you know, contemplating suicide, again, just getting caught and getting found out was the relief, and that first step from there. So if, you know, anyone was listening with an addiction, or, you know, they've got a lifestyle that's out of control, what would you say to them in terms of, obviously, you know, what is the first step? What is to being in control again and getting things into a positive way?
I went through, you know, my path was a 12-step recovery program. There are thousands of different 12-step recovery programs, and most people's problems that, you know, you kind of come across in 12-step recovery are drink and drug related, or gambling maybe. Cocaine Anonymous is a brilliant place to start if you're that way inclined. It's not drug specific, like I said before.
Yeah.
So you can have a problem with any number of substances, and all you have to do is go along. The people are so welcoming and they're awesome. Same with Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. There are other ways to gain sobriety, definitely, if that is your problem.
Yeah.
But I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you how to do that, because I don't think I could have ever achieved that for myself. I needed some guidance, and those people offer me guidance. It's absolutely free. There's no requirement for money. You don't need to, because recovery also is very. If you go into rehab is very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I would reach out to a self-help group. You can, if you've got a drink or drug problem, it doesn't matter if you don't know me. You can contact me, and I can do the best I can to point you in the right direction.
Awesome.
More than happy to do that.
What about the flip side then? What about if someone was listening there was worried about their partner's addiction, or they thought their partner had an addiction? What would you say would be a good thing for them to do?
I've experienced that as well. I've had people whose partners have reached out to me, and there's a guy that's clean and sober for a couple of years, probably 2.5 years now, because his partner regularly was in contact with me, and finally she managed to convince him to go along to a meeting, and he's awesome.
Awesome.
There's nothing stopping partners to go to these sort of groups as well. You can take yourself along. Ultimately, though, it would never have worked for me if I was not doing it for myself. That person's got to want to drink, to change their lifestyle. But yeah, just get some information. There are plenty of there's a couple of government agencies out there. I don't know off the top of my head. If you just Google them, you'll be able to find them.
Yeah.
But yeah, just get involved with one of these groups. 12-step recoveries could definitely be the first place I'd point people.
Fantastic. Awesome. So Kev, if you just want to talk a little bit now about what you're doing, and obviously the services that you provide. Again, I think that's what's really cool about the fitness industry. People come from different backgrounds and getting it for a different reason, and I think to have that kind of connection with a coach, some people, like you said, you find people that are in the same situation as you. So if there is anyone out there that feels that they can benefit from Kev and his coaching, physically, or just as obviously a friendship and advice, how can they reach you, buddy?
So I am a New Hope Fitness on Instagram and in Facebook. On Facebook, my personal account is Kev Wall. I don't know what my personal account is on Instagram, but a New Hope Fitness will be the one you can get me on. I do personal training of any description you like. If you just want to lose some weight, if you want to improve your sort of skill level in sort of Olympic weightlifting or gymnastics, I'm well up for that. I do help some people with changing of habits and managing their life as well. I can do that. But I wouldn't ever take any money for people that have got a problem. If you've got a problem and you want some help, there's no question of money at all.
Brilliant. Kev, absolute star. And that is the true pay it forward ethos there, taking your experience and helping others out from there, and keep each other going. Awesome. Buddy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough. That's why I'm so keen to get this story out. I think it's incredible. You're doing a really good job. Enjoy seeing your progress and obviously developing as a coach. And yeah, look forward to seeing you in the flesh, hopefully soon enough when everything's lifted, and see you on a competition or a box floor soon enough, buddy.
Nice, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. So guys, as Kev said, obviously, if you want to get in touch with him or get in touch with me, and I'll speak to Kev. But guys, if you are struggling or you're worried about somebody, please get in touch. And also, if you've got a story to share and you feel it's important to get the message out, or you want to offer your help and guidance to somebody that possibly be going through you, get in touch with us as soon as possible, and we'd love to hear from you. Guys, that's us for now. Kev, can't thank you enough again, buddy. Enjoy your evening. Say hello to your lovely fiancée, Helen, and the baby. And again, look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you very much.